don't know how long it will take, but
Brilliant. Perfect. Thank you so much. So you mentioned that you did some work with emotional mapping and sort of like people being able to, yeah, tell me a little bit about it because I don't want to dive in and then get it wrong,
okay. So
essentially.
that's all right. People talk about what they're going through with emotions and memories.
Right.
Well, you can
Sure.
imagine what that means. It's like you talk and you say, this is what makes me sad, and this is how I feel, and this is the emotion that's attached to it. Mm. But with emotional mapping, you're basically putting down onto paper by drawing with coloring pencils or a canvas if you want to, essentially what we call like the river of life.
Okay.
And so the river of life is related to emotional mapping, because the people that you meet and talk to you usually want to plot down, by drawing and storytelling, what's important to them, what significant or pivotal events have happened in their lives, and then they draw it. So, for example, you're moving from a real event by saying,
Mhm.
okay, I lost someone who matters to me, who I care about a lot, someone that meant something to me, and lots of things happened. Some were happy and some were sad. But what I want to do now is to shift to my imagination and transfer that to paper. So if I say with the river of life, if I talk about life, you can say, okay, Caitlyn, you were born. If you think about what you could imagine it was like, you'd probably think, well, what does that mean? So I'd say, well, look, I'm Aisha. When I was born, I don't remember much about it, but I imagine it was a joyful experience. And that's an emotion.
Sure.
So with emotional mapping, the emotion here we're talking about is joy. Yeah, and you have two mapping wheels. One is full of emotions. It's not an exhaustive list because you might have one that no one's heard of that you just feel, and isn't on the list because it's very possible in different cultures and different countries, as I've found. So that's one of the wheels, which is full of emotions, and the other one is tangible things. So, for example, things you can touch, or I think we froze. So, things you can touch or elements. So, the other wheel is elements. So, for example, you'll say there's a tree, and it's a tree of life. So, I'll combine the two, and I'll call it the tree of joy. My birth. When I think about my birth, I'll call it the tree of joy, because I've taken a tree and I've taken how I think I would have felt at the time, combined the two, call it the tree of life. And at the beginning of my river, which is every river has a beginning, it's usually the source. I'll plot on it because it's a significant pivotal event that means something. I'll plot on it a picture or a drawing, because I'll draw it myself, of a tree, and I'll call it the tree of joy. And that's the beginning. And I'll tell you a story about what I think happened when I was born, which I'm assuming my parents were very happy and joyful, and that it was a joyful experience. So that's just an example. And I did that with the river of life, or like plotting different parts of what happened in my life. And then I transferred that to loss. So I created a course on the river of loss, which was actually for people to pinpoint all their losses that they could think about. So if I think about my first loss, it was my cat. And I created an island next to the river, and I called it the Island of Sadness, because that's the first loss I could remember. And it also included some more important losses, but overall it was all of the losses I could think of.
Sure.
And then I transferred that then to something called memory lane using emotional mapping, because I took a photograph, in this case, of a big loss to me, which was my mother. I took a photograph of her and I drew an outline of it, just put it out sideways on a laptop. And then when I had the piece of paper with the sketched outline of her face on it, I drew the river down from the top to the bottom across her face. And then I started to tell every story I could think of, which was happy or sad, to do with the relationship I had with my mother. Some were happy stories, spending time in the kitchen where she told us stories, where I put next to her ears the pearls of wisdom,
Yeah, sure.
or the caves of excitement, right down to when she passed away. I'm getting a dry throat, sorry.
That's okay.
Where she passed away. And then I called it the sea of sadness and the sea of despair. I'm going to have to go and get some water.
Yeah, do
Sorry.
that. You do that. Good. No.
I'll
Go
pause the
ahead.
recording. Let's resume. So that's an example of emotional mapping, which is mapping your emotions of your memories by taking real events and shifting them to your imagination.
Right.
And then because the person's gone, or the thing that you've lost is gone, it could even be yourself. Like, you don't know what you're doing with yourself after university. People often come to me for career advice, and then they're like, I don't know where I am anymore, what I'm doing, because what I thought back then isn't what I feel today. It's a way of having something tangible to hold on to, because when someone's actually passed away, you don't have anything anymore. You can't send a smell across to someone else and say, remember this. You might if you're in a space, because it reminds you. But if you have a picture and a map, you can always change it and add to it. And that's the other great thing about emotional mapping, is you just continue to draw new maps all the time. And the best thing about it, even though that sounds brilliant anyway, because it is you sit with a group of people, or just me, and you talk through your stories, because what people feel is there's often a sense of emptiness or loneliness. People they know don't want to hear the same stories over again, because they've heard them already. So they come to someone like me, because I'm a geographer of emotions. Like, geography is going to different places, but this is based on you, yourself. So they'll come and talk to me, and I'll take them through how to draw the maps. They'll go away and draw them. River of losses, river of life, memory lane mapping. And then we'll meet later, and they'll take me through them. And telling the story makes them feel, they feel relieved. They've got someone to share it with, and they feel good, because they're having a chance to retell things that matter to them that other people are like, I just don't really care. Yeah.
Oh yeah, something that they've heard a multitude of times,
Exactly.
where they're like, we're not getting anything out of this. Is it sort of like is it be rude to be like it's like a coping mechanism, or
yeah, absolutely. It's a different way of helping people to manage their loss and grief,
right?
And to move forward. So the course I created is actually to help them to move forward with positivity. And the reason I included that in there was because I realized I'm actually quite a cheerful person anyway. Nevertheless, I did go through loss and grief, and it's been very difficult. However, at some point, I got to the point in life, and COVID probably helped contribute towards that as well, where I thought, I just want to actually live life and be in it, and not just be in it, but live it.
Right. There's such a difference.
And the guy,
it's like, go ahead. Sorry.
The guy that created this whole methodology about the river of life, he studied it and learned it, and then I learned it off him. But one thing he says is, when the rain falls from the sky, you don't just want to see the drops, you want to feel them. It's true. And it's the same with yourself. People keep things inside, but they don't realize how much better they feel simply just by sharing and storytelling their experiences.
Sure.
That's what it is.
No, that's great. Thank you. No, it's an interesting one, because I think, naturally people are like, oh, if you've experienced grief, you go to counselling, or you talk about it in a group. Whereas this seems like, well, what I'm hearing is a practical approach, if you like, which is we can visually see ourselves putting something down, which, for some people that's such a godsend in comparison to just talking. It's like people like they just talk, but then it does.
Just thinking, have I got a map I can show you? I didn't think of that.
Oh, amazing. No, that's okay. Do
you want me to see?
Yeah, that would be great. It's great hearing about it also as well, but I think actually, because I've created an image in my head, whereas I'm wondering if it's matching up with what actually occurs. But I guess it changes person to person, right? Everybody's map will look.
Of course. I mean, nobody's map will ever be the same. And even if you created a second map, it will be different from your first map, because the memories you will remember as time passes change.
It's interesting, because I think also part of me sits here and goes like, why would you wait until something bad happens? This seems like a very healthy thing to do.
Yes. So actually, what I find is sometimes when people are coming towards the end of their lives and they want to pass on a gift, I help them to create memories, which is why I call it making memories. And the number of times, because I work with people who are dealing with loss and grief, the number of times they say, oh, I wish I had known what so-and-so was thinking, it's too late. So
Right.
what I'm doing is inviting them to talk about it or put down what they want beforehand so they can then
Oh,
share it.
wow.
Can you see that?
Yeah, no, that's great.
Okay, so if I just briefly take you through it. This is
Yeah,
the outline
sure.
of my mum, her photo. I've got a picture of her with a photo, but I don't think I've quite got it. No, I haven't got it on the screen. So this is the outline of the photo. This is the river in blue. Is it big enough?
Yeah, 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 no, that's
Okay.
great. You can see it
It's
really
called,
clearly.
yeah. So I've kind of got pivotal moments of memories. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I start with
Right.
my birth, which is the tree of joy. That's the example I gave you. Then I found out my mum needed an organ transplant. So I created a desert of hope because we
Right.
always had hope. You have to have hope,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
even though you don't really know what's going to happen. And around here, I've got the realization of sickness. So I drew these caves of worry. And then if you follow it around here, I've got the family unity, which is the pillars of strength. That's these here under the eyes. And then as you follow it around here, I've got that the illness worsened. So I drew these peaks, like mountainous peaks of challenges.
Sure.
Um, and then around here, I've got this cooking, which is the stones of calm, because my mum always was very calm and told us lots of advice and gave us lots of advice and told us stories. And it was always done in the kitchen, really, when she was cooking. So that's
Oh,
that. School, which is the rock of stability. And I think that's then I'm just trying to see what I drew. Oh, I think it's a bridge of excitement, which is the A-level lunch when we finished our studies, went out for lunch with my mum. University, which here is the village of opportunity. Oh, I
yeah, no, I
see.
like
Sorry, I was
that.
just trying to see this. The rock of stability is the lips here, which is the talking.
Sure.
And then the last bit, which is the blue, which is her death, which is the sea of despair. Because it was just like despair. So
Of course.
that's an example.
No, that's great. That's
It's
great.
a very very condensed version of how the whole thing works, but that's emotional
Sure.
mapping, and it's a different way of helping people to process how they're feeling. So
So
hopefully
did
they come
you
out feeling better.
Right, right. So did you get into this before your mom had passed or was it
No.
afterwards?
In fact, it's been a very long time. So back then, it was 20 years. It's been.
Wow.
And what happened during COVID was I was getting a lot of people coming to my door who were very, very, very lonely or distressed because nobody knew what was happening with the world. And I realized these emotions were kind of all coming back, this kind of feeling of not knowing and
Sure.
having to have hope and thinking, oh, it doesn't seem to matter what the scenario is, but it's obviously a big enough scenario or situation
Mm.
with COVID that it's making me feel the same. So during that time, aside from my day job, I work I work in a day job. I became a coach, and when I became a coach, I learned about how to help people with their emotions. And at the same time, did a course on how to learn about emotional mapping. And I realised that the two go really well in hand together, because coaching and counselling and therapy is one thing, and emotional
Hmm.
mapping is just a different way for people to express themselves. And it feels a bit more light-hearted, really, because you're not sort of
Sure.
sitting there with a notepad. You're not
Yeah, that's
prescribing something to people, and they feel sort of safe. So anything that happens when I run it in groups, anything that happens only stays in that group,
right.
before, during, and after. And I don't promote that sort of thing. What individuals have said, unless they say, please tell this to others because I want them to know, because it's not, it's not your conventional traditional form of tool that you would offer, skills and tools that you'd offer for people to try to feel better.
Yeah, of course. It's this thing sometimes, isn't it? Sitting in a big group with like, so how, I always think you've seen it on soap, so you see it online where it's like, so let's talk about the feelings that we have today, and it feels very contrived. Whereas when you've got this sort of like the freedom of doing something that's very individual to you, it seems quite freeing. And I think a lot of the time with grief and with death, it's quite balled up, it's quite tight. So to be able to free it and to be able to express it, I think is very important for people. like mentally more than anything.
I would
Has
agree
it
with that.
changed? Yeah. Has it changed your perception on, like, has it helped you to work with your own grief, or has it helped you with
For
like a
sure.
change in perception?
If I hadn't, because throughout those 20 years, I was getting on with life, so I think it took about 5 years after my mum passed away, my grandmother as well, to just kind of
Oh,
feel like I'm back on track with how to live my life. But once I became a coach and learned about emotional mapping, this is the key. I figured out what my purpose is. And that's so different
right.
because being passionate about something is one thing, but knowing what you're here for. I spent so many years. I work in a law firm, and I've always worked in on the business side with developing relationships and helping people to negotiate. And you have certain transferable skills, but with this, helping people feel better is different to providing them with a service and charging them for your advice. This is actually guiding them to do it themselves,
Mm,
and it's a completely different feeling. So I felt really good after drawing my own maps, and I just thought this has to be shared, which is why I put this course together, because my goodness, it took a lot of time to do it, but it's been really
of
worth
course.
it. And even if one person, who's been many more than one, but even if it's just one person that says, gosh, I didn't realize I've slept for 13 hours and I haven't slept properly ever since that happened. You don't realize the impact you're having on someone until they tell you. And it's the same with me. So because it helped me feel better and just relieved, um, then I thought it's worth putting together to help others. Otherwise, if you haven't experienced something as a lived experience yourself, then you're not really in the right position, I don't think, to vicariously say, oh, I'm sure that would be good for you. Let me tell you why.
Precisely.
I don't think so. I'm not one of those people that prescribes to do this, do that if I haven't lived it myself, which is why I'm very quick at saying, no, I'm not going to do that or that. But with this, I can because I've been through it.
Yeah. It's important. I think it's an empathy towards another person, and I think that's what people lack a lot of the time, and that's when this like contrived nature of being like, well, I know what's best for you, and it's like, well, you don't, because everybody is different, right? And I think, yeah, I'm sort of seeing it. I go to an arts university, but I'm sort of seeing this as like an arts form where I'm just like, it's just the key to expressing yourself, it's a piece of paper or it's a canvas and it's blank and it's completely catered to you without any outside voices.
Drawing is the easiest form of expression.
Right,
They
okay.
say, I'm not an artist, you can see from that. I'm not a brilliant artist, but I can use my imagination and put something down. And people can often sit in a room and feel very, very lonely, even if there's 100 people there. Or they
Yeah.
can, or they can do something like this where they don't need to talk to people until they're ready to or want to. They don't have to, but they can put down
There's a
how
bit,
they feel. It's different. It's quite
sure.
cathartic.
Yeah, yeah. There's a big difference between being alone and lonely, and that's something that we've tapped into. Actually, it's been a bit of a running theme through the interviews where it's sat in a social setting but still feeling like completely alone because of your emotions, rather than you're surrounded by people but you still feel that way. It's an interesting one. Do you work with children as well, or is it
I have
just
done, yes. In fact, just recently
okay?
I had my first parent and 15-year-old.
Right.
And it was just really humbling,
Mm,
because I didn't expect. I knew that the mother wanted her child to experience this, the emotional mapping,
sure.
but she joined, and he was 8 when he lost his father and 15 now.
Wow.
So what I watched and observed from both of them towards each other just was quite mind blowing and eye opening, and just made me thankful and grateful that I was able to, help them see how each other sees it, because they didn't before.
Wow.
It's just there's so many things that I was a child myself. I was 15 and then 25 when my mother finally passed away. So it'd been 10 years. I was a teenager. So it's
Mm,
exactly at that age, which is probably why it felt really special, running it with a teenager, because I was one. And it's not different. I mean, in the end, we all have a heart that beats, and whether we're empaths or not, we have, well, I say most people have empathy, even if they're not empathic. Um,
sure.
Not everyone does, but I think most people do, and I think that goes hand in hand with emotions, doesn't it? So that's why this
Yeah, for
seems to work
sure.
well.
No, it's interesting actually. It's interesting a relationship in a family dynamic. I hadn't thought of that, but obviously when a death in some cases is never affecting just one person, if that's family, friend, or whatever in that case. But no, it was interesting to see whether there would have been a difference between a child and an adult. Because I think people, well, children people say that you lose a creativity at a certain age or that you become less expressionate. So I was just wondering whether that was different between, say, a mom and a child, whether that like level of expression was different.
I think as an adult, people have experienced life more, and as a child,
Right.
they know very quickly, very very quickly, and they're very astute as to what's happened and why. And the adult
Yeah.
has to find the space, the right area, the right forum, the right platform to reach what their kid is thinking. And if that kid is, not available or chooses to go to counselling, that's also good. It's better to do
Mm,
something than
mm.
not. But
Agreed, yeah.
yeah, and something like this is quite different because they're sharing that with their parent in the same space. Um, I haven't done it with a child without the parent. I probably wouldn't because
Right.
I'm not a therapist. I'm not, medical practitioner. But
Sure,
I'm quite
sure.
glad that the parent was there, and I was surprised how similar they were, even though they hadn't communicated it to each other over those years. So that's why it was quite humbling. But you don't realise the strength and power of what you have that you're helping others with
Of
until they
course.
tell you, like. At the beginning, he was like, "Mum only told me about this 2 hours ago." He was quite grumpy and resistant, yeah. And at the halfway through, he was like, "I know exactly what I'm going to say." He didn't really need much time, but he did need time to draw. And by the end of it, he said, "We're going to do this again, aren't we?" And I was like, "Oh, I need to talk to your mother, but if it helps you, yeah." But he's also wanted to do counselling again, and I said, "Please do that because that's different to this." Um,
Of course.
I'd never. I'm always one of those people that I think the more that helps you, the better. I don't think there's like just one line of helping someone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not just like one area to stick with and that will be your savior. It's different bits and pieces.
Everything works different for different people, doesn't it? Um,
Yeah, yeah. Stuff like the afterlife or beliefs on the afterlife or like doing this, has it made you think a little bit more outside the box on what you believe in with, what happens after death?
I always had faith.
Right, okay.
Um, my mum was pretty religious. I'm not. I'm religious, but I would say I have faith rather than I'm really religious, right?
Sure,
But
sure.
ultimately, I don't have. I don't fear death like I did when I was 15 or 16.
Right.
Because when you're hit with the news that somebody's not well and you don't know what's going to happen, you suddenly start to think about death. And having faith guided me definitely and my family through because it helps provide hope um, without being preachy about it. Um, but I never, no, I don't like to sort of, I'm not like super religious, but I have, I have faith. I believe in God. Um,
Mm,
I know without my faith and my family's faith together, we probably wouldn't have been as strong as we were. But I also think
right.
we had a lot of hope, and you have to have that hope. I think because if you don't, I'm a mindset coach. If you don't have hope, I think you can often get yourself into a bit of a tiz. A lot of your neurons are around your stomach, which are your emotions, and that creates anxiety and lack of self-confidence and self-esteem. So if you can kind of figure out a way to manage those, because there are lots of ways, you can park that at some point and live through life because ultimately you are still here on this planet, even though at some point you won't be.
Sure.
The fear I had about death, even though I had faith when I was 15 and 16, um, didn't get worse. In fact, I just accept that we have a time limit, we expire at some point. That's it.
Yeah, yeah.
So you
No,
have
it's
to
interesting.
make the
It's
most
like
of
you
it.
got, yeah, yeah, no, it's like the belief in it's like the matter of fact belief, which is like, yeah, you will die at one point, like that point will come, but also the fact like there's a comfort, like faith is the comfort into believing like there's something else that's there where you can go afterwards, right?
For me, yeah, I mean, ultimately, a lot of people I speak to are spiritual, or they have
Mm,
faith, or they believe in something in the universe or their universe. So
yeah,
um, I don't like to, preach what I think people should believe. But I think if someone has some sort of hope, and I say hope because I don't say if someone has faith or religion or um, belief. I just say if someone has hope that there's something else there, that might provide them with some form of comfort.
yeah, yeah.
So
Hope,
you
it's a
don't have to
huge
worry so
one.
much. Mm. Yeah,
It's
it's a big
huge.
one.
Yeah, something that yeah, like and actually it pops up a lot with like, well, you know, it's death can be an awful thing. It can be something that really, really upsets a lot of people, but it's the aftermath that's just as important. It's the hope that, you know, carries you through, which is as important. You
Sure.
know, I'm like I think about that with my own, like I'd lost both grandparents within the space of 18 months.
Oh no. Sorry to hear
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So it's like that was it was we were both granddads, so it was separate sides of family. But yeah, you just like you know, you can't just I found we were like I was 16 and then 18. So you were like, right, you can't dwell on that. We're gonna have to like you have to remain hopeful about other things, you know. Like you've had really, really great times with them and now they're in better places, you know, and it's like it's that mindset of if I'm just sat there distraught about it, that's not gonna help.
Oh, well, that's if that's how you feel, then that's good to know.
Yeah,
Um,
it was a hard it was like I it was a process. I think definitely a process, but I sat there and was like, no, I can't. I had some really, really, really good years, and now I'm like they were in, you know, a bad place near the end. And now I'm like that's more freeing. Do you know what I
okay.
mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting one. It's just like it's interesting to hear other. It's like also the way that like certain certain people can be affected by certain deaths more than others. That's another thing as well. And like how I mean, I just yeah, it's just it's interesting to hear. It's interesting to hear.
I mean, you can talk about it for hours. Everyone's different, and I mean, I have an opinion on that, but it's redundant sharing it because actually, it's what you feel, and that's
Right.
what's important because that's your relationship you had with them and how you decide you want to continue to live in life.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure. No, that's
yeah.
interesting though. Oh no, no, I was just saying thank you so much because honestly, like when I saw your message, I was like, none of this I've ever heard of this. This is a completely different outlet. You know, we were talking to carers, we were talking to nurses, we were talking to people who've experienced personal loss, but hadn't seen sort of like an outlet or another like a different mindset away from counselling, if you like. So yeah, no, it's been really interesting. So I want to say thank you for that.
You're very welcome. It sounds like you have a good impression of it.
Yeah, no, I do, because I think there's so many things that can help, right? And it's like you just got to be open to those things.
Yeah,
Yeah, not have just such a closed like view on it. And you know, I think sometimes you get so bogged down and you're just like, no, this could help. You know, just be open to the fact that something different could help you.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's what this is. I mean, I am different. That's why I went along the route. So, yeah,
No, but it's like it's worked for you and it's obviously working for other people, so that's
yeah,
great.
yeah. I'm very thankful and humbled with the reactions, and those people are still in touch because I must have helped them and it's touched their hearts in some way because you want them to have a
Yeah,
happy heart. So
of
you
course.
know, then it's a win-win.
That's what it's all about.
I'm
No,
happy and
thank
you're
you.
happy. Oh, you're very welcome. Let me know what you do with it. I'll pause the recording now then.